And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's weather again, looking at this front, bringing increasing winds and rain to at least the western Fox Islands here. Some gale force winds are for Adak and Atka. Otherwise, lighter winds, much drier conditions for the southeast Bering Sea. Blizzard warning kicks in for St. Lawrence Island at 3 a.m. tonight. It stays out until 3 p.m. Friday afternoon. Look for some snow here into the Yukon Delta and up the river valley there a ways. Then light snow flurries here to the east. Otherwise, no change everywhere else. And then for tomorrow, maybe a few more clouds or cloudy skies for the southern panhandle with this low in the vicinity. Otherwise, no change over southern Alaska. A few areas of light snow here for the mid and upper Tanana Valley. Cold high pressure in over the north slope. And snow continues with snow and blowing snow for the St. Lawrence Island area. Gale force winds from about Adak Atka eastward, bearing down now on the eastern Aleutians with increasing rain, especially on the Pacific side of the western Alaska Peninsula. And then for Friday, winds spreading northward here with a tightening gradient here as this low center lifts up to just south of Amchitka Island. Gale force winds ahead of the front all the way into the western Alaska Peninsula. By contrast, mostly dry over all of interior Alaska, except along this trough. Look for some areas of light snow, some clouds extending southward a little bit there into possibly the Copper River Basin, but pretty good conditions for the Panhandle. Light winds now across that area, Gulf of Alaska, right on up into the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. This area of snow sliding westward, so conditions improving there for St. Lawrence Island, especially in the afternoon. And for the south coast, tomorrow, east winds 15 to 20 knots. East and northeast 15 to 20 knot winds on the north coast. Small craft advisories for Lynn Canal, north winds at 25 knots, north at 15 for Stevens Passage, southeast at 15 for Clarence Strait. And then for the Strait on Friday, those winds turn north at about 15 knots, north at 20 for Stevens Passage, north 15. So pretty good winds even over the inside waters there for the southeast coast here. And the south coast, east 10 to 15 knots, central and north coast, east to southeast, only at 10 knots. Prince William Sound, north winds 10 knots. Cook Inlet, variable winds 10 to 15 knots. Small craft advisories here for the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, northwest at 25 to 30 knots. And for the western North Gulf Coast, western and central areas, north to northeast winds at 15 knots, 25 knots there for the eastern coast. And then for the day on Friday, light variable winds 10 knots. Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. Otherwise, Cook Inlet, north to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots. And for the Kodiak Island area, west-northwest 15 to 20 knots tomorrow, southeast at 25 for the Alaska Peninsula, northeast at 10 for Bristol Bay. And then for the day on Friday, gale force winds pushing to the western Alaska Peninsula here from the east and southeast, 35 to 40 knots. Small craft advisories for Bristol Bay, southeast at 25. But look at Kodiak Island. Winds light and variable at 10 knots with seas 2 to 3 feet. Gale warnings for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow. East-southeast 35 to 45 knots. Call it east 40 knots for Adak and Atka. Gales all the way out to about Kiska Island there. Then they turn northeast and drop off to 30 knots. Kiska to Shimia. And then for the day on Friday, northeast 25 to 30 knots. Shimia to Kiska, Amchitka Island, east 30 knots, east 35 knots for Adak and Atka, and gale force 45 knot winds from the east and southeast for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast, well actually for Norton Sound, brisk wind advisory east at 25 tomorrow. St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta coast, south at 15, southeast 15 there for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, southeast 25 for the Pribilofs, and 15 knots for St. Matthew Island. And for Friday, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, northeast at 20, east 15 for the Yukon Delta coast. Small craft advisories for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, east at 25. And good gales for the Pribilofs, east 40 knots, seas 16 feet, east 35 with 15-foot seas for St. Matthew Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, much lighter on the winds with, direction west-southwest of 15 knots. West winds 20 knots for the central and western Arctic coast for the Chukchi Sea. West and north winds 15 to 20 knots. And then for Friday, Chukchi Sea north at 20, west at 10 for the western Arctic coast, central coast, west at 20 knots. And then those west winds picking up again here For the eastern Boulevard Sea coast at 25 to 30 knots.